downtown to 390. Eden's 15 minutes, Lake Hook to Montrose, but outbound 18. Kennedy, now 40 minutes, O'Hare to downtown, 26 from Montrose, 19 of the Express. Outbound 13 minutes to Montrose, 33 to the airport. Northbound I-55 has delays, 126 to Weber. Then it's 38 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive, outbound 32. The Bryan, 21 minutes, 95 to downtown, outbound 12. I-57, 12 minutes, I-80 to the Verge, Mission 4011. Northbound Lakeshore Drive is heavy from the Stevenson to Monroe. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Sunny and delightful day, high 78, clear and 58 overnight. 65 now at O'Hare. Next news coming up at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Some good news from the Supreme Court. They have taken an interest in the case Students for Fair Admissions versus President and Fellows of Harvard College. This is a suit that was brought by Asian American students being discriminated against by Harvard and other Ivy League schools. And remarkably, I mean, it's just stunning. The claim, and the evidence to support the claim is substantial, that Asian American applicants were having their character scores artificially lowered so they could be denied admission because, of course, Harvard wants just the right mix of identities on campus. That's committing fraud in the application process. We're not talking about on the student side. We're talking about on the admission side, committing fraud against applicants. And these are supposed to be our preeminent institutions of higher learning.
Wasn't it discrimination, too?
Well, this is what the plaintiffs would like the Supreme Court to weigh in on, and the Supreme Court has asked the Biden administration to file an amicus brief setting forth its views on the case, which makes it much more likely that the Supreme Court will take up this case, not this coming term, but perhaps in the not-too-distant future. For more on this and generally the most recent identitarian hashtag Stop Asian Hate campaign, pleased to be joined by Kenny Xu, lead insider on the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard case, president of Color Us United and commentary writer for The Federalist, The Washington Examiner, The Daily Signal, and Quillette. He's got a new book out, An Inconvenient Minority, The Attack on Asian American Excellence and the Fight for Meritocracy. Oh, meritocracy. That's a fighting word. Kenny, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I liked what you said in a recent piece in Quillette where you argued that critical race theory is not a matter of civil rights. One side pursues equality and progress. Those are the civil rights side. The other, the CRT side, this is a great phrase, makes a fetish of oppression and division. Elaborate on that description of the identitarians making a fetish of oppression and division.
Ultimately, when you want to live in a society that has truly equal treatment and tolerance, right, you want to make race as little of an issue as possible. And that's not what's happening in critical race theory. Critical race theory is not about making race as little of an issue as possible. Critical race theory is about advancing race as far as it can go. And it's breaking down. In the case of Asian Americans, the idea of a minority is supposed to be all minorities in solidarity against white people. But now Harvard is discriminating against Asian Americans in favor of other minorities, like Black and Hispanic people. So the race narrative starts to break down, and critical race theorists are trying to grasp at what little power they have in this race narrative that is quickly being dissolved by demographic change in this country.
Well, how has the Harvard case been received? I mean, of course, it's been tamped down in terms of coverage from the D.C. press corps, but how is it being received as compared to the identitarians' hashtag Stop Asian Hate campaign of the summer so far?
The elites, which include Harvard's admissions office, which include Democratic politicians, are very much trying to make this an issue or a non-issue. Ted Cruz actually proposed an amendment to a recent bill that said we will ban federal funding from all higher education institutions that discriminate against Asian Americans. This is a classic anti-discrimination bill. Guess what happened? 49 out of 49 Republicans voted for it, and 48 out of 48 Democrats voted against it.
Right. And so, is that penetrating, the Chinese American community? Because, obviously the coverage is going to be stilted from those same outlets that are not covering the Harvard case. But, it just doesn't seem to me that there's the outrage against those who are actually practicing the discrimination, that it's being nicely covered up by projecting it onto Republicans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is what the contradictions of the race narrative truly expose. Because if you are an Asian American activist, say you really care about Asian Americans getting equal treatment in society, well, this should be a case you should really jump on, the Harvard discrimination case. But they don't, because it challenges the ruling powers that disseminate liberal thought. Harvard University is basically effectively the disseminator of liberal elitism in this country today. And so this is why this case is so fascinating, because it so contradicts the left's narrative against discrimination and against race, that they're actually defending elite discrimination against Asian Americans. And that's why I wrote this book, An Inconvenient Minority.
Now, in your book, though, did you interview any of the students who were discriminated against, or have you met any of them?
Yes. I mean, there are many. Students for Fair Admissions, the group suing Harvard, is anonymous. It's entirely anonymous. But I have met Asian Americans who've told me their stories. When you have this kind of elite discrimination against an entire racial group, what happens is that you raise the competition culture up to 120% for this group. And you have these Asian Americans that are in these hotbox schools that basically find themselves resenting their fellow Asian Americans, because they know that those are the people that the Ivy Leagues are going to compare them to, not the general public. They're going to compare them to Asian Americans. So you have these brilliant, incredible students who feel very resentful and very bitter about the world and about their society, about their place in society as a result of this discrimination.
Students for Fair Admissions can be anonymous, but Chinese Americans and other Asian Americans, they can't be. I mean, we need more people like yourself that are willing to stand and deliver, because otherwise what you see happen, the completely absurd, to the point of banality, discussions about whether the Wuhan virus or the China virus is discriminatory, and when somebody criticizes the Chinese government, they're really attacking Chinese Americans, just all of this silliness that the left uses as misdirection plays, these language games they want to play, when you understand who we're talking about when we talk about COVID and the Chinese. We're not talking about, my friend who lives in my neighborhood. We're talking about Chinese communists, obviously. But that's lost because frankly, there's not enough Kenny Shoes that are standing up and saying, that is ridiculous. Here's where the focus should be. And people who are telling you to look over there are charlatans.
Yeah. And here's the part your listeners need to keen in and need to tune in on, because there is resentment against Asian Americans in this country. Guess where it's coming from? The elite. Elite.
Right.
Because you have these Asian Americans, and they come into this country with basically nothing, And within one generation, their kids are out competing your kids on the SATs in grades because they're studying twice as many hours as the average American, which they are, by the way. That's a statistic that's proven. And you have these white liberal elites, at the top who want to get their kids into these selective schools who are now being outcompeted by Asians on merit. So what do they use? They use politics. They attack Asian American excellence. In the public schools, in the gifted and talented programs, they use these stereotypes against Asian Americans, say they're test-taking robots with no personality. Harvard attacks Asian Americans on their personality score. They try to make character arguments against Asian Americans, and that's how they're able to suppress Asian Americans from admission.
Right, and the other thing that really hurts the white left elite is not just in terms of the education and the competition there and the performance relative to other demographics, but also then, and this of course translates in terms of household income. Because they obsess about income inequality, and at the top of the top of the heap, not white men, but Asian Americans, Chinese Americans, Indian Americans, and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why the entire narrative about America being a white supremacist country is so idiotic. Because if America was such a white supremacist country, why would they allow this group of minorities to come and step up ahead of them in the socioeconomic cycle? That doesn't make any sense. The reality is America has been a meritocracy. But that is in danger because the principles of excellence that drive meritocracy are being attacked by today's elite. They're saying merit is racist because of critical race theory. And this is a journey, and Asian Americans find themselves square in the middle of this journey that really encompasses all of American excellence and public life in the future.
What's interesting too is I remember a couple of years ago when it was Amy Chua is her name, right? So she wrote the Tiger Mom book.
Amy Chua,
yeah, and so it became this sort of fascination, and the book did very well. I remember talking to her when I was at a different radio station, and it was interesting because people were interested in this comparative contrast. I remember of the culture and how she was raising her child, and how those cultural differences lead to perhaps different outcomes, the approaches. And I remember watching a documentary called 2 Million Minutes, the number of minutes that people spend in high school. And it was a high school kid in Indiana, a high school kid in India, and a high school kid in China, and how different their high school systems are and the experiences and so forth. And at one point, we were having this discussion in this country about these differences, sort of to say, how do we address some of the disparities? How do we understand that we're making trade-offs where maybe there are more social activities or extracurricular activities, and there's more focus over here on academics and perhaps one extracurricular activity, and it's just cultural and it's fine. And now it's like, wallowing in mediocrity, no interest in making distinctions. We just see somebody doing better in one sliver of life, and we say we have to pull that person down. The conversation has changed a lot in a very short period of time.
In a very short period of time. And the reason why you see this attack on excellence itself, the attack on the SAT, trying to get rid of the SAT, trying to get rid of gifted and talented math programs, wrote an article about this in the Daily Signal about inclusive math, saying we can't have gifted students. We actually need to just bring them over to the level so they can be taught with the rest of the students. The reason why this is happening is because there is really a self-esteem issue in our culture, in our culture, in segments of our culture, where people are really worried about how their kids are going to get the privileges of society when some people and some groups find themselves scoring lower than other people in other groups. But the reality is, the way that I would look at it, as president of Color Us United, I'm advocating for a race-blind society. Instead of saying, oh, wow, my race is at the lower tier of this educational spectrum, that must say something about me. You look at it and you say, look, I'm an individual. I have the power to change my child's future or my future in the way that I want. And if I want to get to where I want to be, I can learn from the people who are achieving at the higher end and maybe that will help to change my future. And I think that that's the way that we should be going.
I completely agree, and it tracks with your op-ed that I referenced at the outset, too. We've moved from equality in terms of opportunity to equity, which means equal outcomes. And that's, I think, why the conversation has changed so rapidly, is because we're suggesting a whole new playing field. It's not about opportunities, it's about outcomes. They have to be the same, regardless of, merit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is part of the mission of Color Us United. This is why your listeners who's listening should go on colorusunited.org and watch our video about what defines you. And race does not define people. You ask people this question, what defines you? And people are going to say their aspirations, their dreams, who they are, their idea as a parent. And race, and pushing race as the definition of a person, is just going to lead to so much fixation, so much fetishization. So we're creating a petition that we want your listeners to sign, colorusunited.org, that says, hey, media, we don't want you guys to treat us as racial categories, treat us as individuals.
Kenny Xu, lead insider on the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard case, president of Color Us United, as he was describing, commentary writer for The Federalist, The Washington Examiner, The Daily Signal, Colette as well. The book, An Inconvenient Minority, The Attack on Asian American Excellence and the Fight for Meritocracy. Kenny, thanks for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. On AM 560, The Answer.
This is a metaphor for your business's journey.